Hello, thanks for accessing these Inspired for Mission videos. Our hope with these videos is that they do exactly that they inspire you with the work that others around our Synod are doing for mission and the mission that we share. In this video, we get to hear from Pastor Sarah Stummy and a couple of the leaders at Our Savior's Lutheran in Oconomowoc about how the book, The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker, has really shifted how they think about planning congregational gatherings with intention and purpose, and that those gatherings, when planned intentionally like this, are more impactful, connect people to each other and to God more effectively. It was a rich conversation with all sorts of practical applications for how we plan congregational events. While the book, The Art of Gathering, is not explicitly about congregational life, it's deeply applicable to the things we do in the congregation. So we hope that you are as inspired in watching this conversation as those of us who were there in person, as it were by being a part of it. It was a really great conversation to hear how just some intentionality and how this one congregation has really been impacted by the book. Enjoy the conversation and use the discussion questions afterwards to either mine some of the learning for yourself or to think with a group about how these same resources could be applicable in your context. So tonight, we are joined by Pastor Sarah Stummy, the senior pastor at Our Savior's in Oconomowoc, and she's going to be talking about the book, The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker, and how Our Savior's in Oconomowoc has used that to really be intentional around how they shape gatherings and what they're learning from this book. You do not have to have read the book to get something rich out of this conversation. And with that as introduction, I'm going to invite Pastor Sarah to introduce us to the folks who are with her from Our Savior's.
Oh, thank you. So my name is Sarah Stummy, and I serve at Our Savior's. And just a note of why this book tonight. I never listened to the radio in the car, and I happened to one day while I was driving to work. I had about a 25-minute commute, and it was during COVID. And Kristen Tipper was interviewing Priya Parker, and it was this book about gathering. And we radically changed how we gathered at worship. We were outside in the parking lot. We were discovering new things. So it piqued my interest. But then she started talking about things at gathering, and pretty much not what we did wrong, but what we did at church wasn't like leveraging our gatherings for the most potential. So that really piqued my interest. So I ordered the book. And it is the most practical book on church that isn't a theology or church book that I've ever read. And I hand it out to people left and right because we gather so much in congregational life. As the body of Christ, we gather. So that's why I'm here tonight, because it's been so helpful to me. I'm hopeful for our people at Our Savior's, and they'll share in that a little bit. But also here, and really grateful for all of you because you care for your communities of faith, you care for the mission and ministry of the church. And it's really awesome to share with one another ways that we're learning how to do that together and encourage and equip. So I leave these meetings encouraged because we're practicing these things locally. So thank you for being here tonight. Now, I need to make a disclaimer. My gift is not hospitality. I am a doer and I am a problem solver. I am the one who likes to hide in the kitchen. So I have, and that's probably another reason this book has been so helpful. But I've invited two people from Our Savior's tonight. We've read the book as a staff. We've had some ministry groups read it, but I've invited two people with the gift of hospitality who do a lot of gathering, both to share some stories and just a little bit about how they've used the book. So first, I'd like to invite Martha Riley, and she is our gatherer extraordinaire. You just walk in the room and you're like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a party. She can't not do that. But Martha, I'd like, in addition to introducing yourself, just one thing that you really enjoy from gathering people, like why this just exudes from you.
Yeah, sure. Why I love that. So I'm Martha Riley. I'm a member of Our Savior's, and I have the chance to work with several ministries where gathering and hospitality are a huge part of that. And one thing I love about gathering is just the story sharing. You know, it's the moving beyond the surface conversations about the weather or whatever, and just talking about our life experiences and building connections off of that. So glad to be here tonight.
Thank you, Martha, and invited Bethany to share tonight too. And she's the director of our middle school and high school ministry. And she's definitely has a spiritual gift of hospitality relationships too. And so just Bethany, I'm curious, like she's a host, like she loves to host. So what in addition to saying hello, what is something that you enjoy about hospitality and gathering people?
Hi, I am Bethany Kirshner, and I am, as she said, the director of our youth ministries at Our Saviors. I at church host a lot, but I love to host at home too. And I think it's because I love creating situations where people can be real, where I honestly I'm not a huge fan of small talk. So I love making people comfortable so that they can be comfortable in the space and comfortable with each other.
So thank you, Bethany. So part of the reason that this book is really talking to us, and Priya Parker really talks about leveraging gatherings for transformational purpose. And really her main kind of statement is that we really confuse programs for purpose. And we host a lot of gatherings that don't really host people well, or have competing purposes and values, aren't hospitable. And that may really have started out with an amazing purpose and reason, but leak those over time. And in church, when we look at some of our gatherings, we can say, yeah, we thought we had a purpose, but it was really just a program. And so we're going to talk more about that. But just to get kind of our thinking going tonight, we're going to break into small groups, and we're going to take just about 3 minutes. It's going to be an ad hoc small group, but here's the 2 questions I'm inviting you to think about. And Pastor Monty just put them in the chat. Think of a party and event that was really great. Why was it great? So something you've been to, you're like, wow, that was just amazing. And then a party or an event that you went to that you're just like, that stunk. And why was it not so great? So we're going to think about a good one and some elements, and one that wasn't so great. Just take a couple of minutes, and then we'll share some of our highlights when we come back. 3 minutes total.
Okay, and we'll just check in quick with Pastor Monty, who's our tech guru tonight. How are you doing on setting up we're just going to go in pairs of 2, I think. How's that going, setting up the small groups?
Yeah, it'll be all 2, except I think maybe 1 group of 3.
Perfect.
So if you have 3, you just have to talk quicker. All right, so here you go. I will send you off.
All right, just checking in. I think that's probably Pastor Tyler Rasmussen, because it says Reverend Tyle and
I'll
Tosin. Tyler, are you there? Okay. Well,
maybe should I move him to there? It looks like
I'm
there's
here, but
one group with just 1 person.
I'm here, but I'm making dinner, so
Okay,
I'm available to talk.
I'm gonna move. There's a group that only has 1 person right now.
yeah, so just move them over to a new group. Thanks, Tyler. Good to know. Most of the rest of this is going to be sharing with you'll be able to cook at the same time and just listen. That'll be fine.
I literally just got home, so it's like
Yep, I totally get it. Glad you're here.
So I set a timer for 3 minutes.
Perfect.
Should I do a little when they have 1 minute remaining, send a little.
I actually don't think you need to, because when you hit end, it will give them 60
Oh,
more
that's
seconds.
true. That's true.
So then they'll get the 60-second timer.
Yeah.
At first, I was tempted, like for you and I, to like do this really quick, and I was like, no, no, no. We need to be able to watch like the timing, and if somebody else shows up,
If
and
somebody else joins, yeah. No, I think that makes sense.
and
Although
the
I
fact
will
that
say, I have put my name on reserve for this book from the library. Actually, after that storytelling thing, because she talked about it at the
yeah.
beginning of November, and I was so excited.
Mhm.
And so I'm waiting for the book. It's still on hold. I'm on the list.
I love it. Heard great things. I've kind of flipped through it, and then heard the same podcast interview that Pastor Sarah talked about, and then watched several YouTube videos and the TED Talks and stuff by Priya Parker. It's amazing. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Right.
Let me know when you hit the. Oh, there
Yeah.
you just.
Yeah.
Yep, it popped up and told me to.
What was the podcast? I didn't catch that.
It's on Being.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Krista Tippett.
So
All right.
she said the name wrong. It's not. It was Krista Tippett. Yeah.
Okay. I will look for that. Welcome back.
But you two had wrapped up your time. We're expecting everybody else to come flooding back in about 30 seconds when they get forced out of their rooms.
Well, we ended
Yeah.
up locking up, so we
Yeah.
really
We had
didn't
some
have that good of a
internet
connection.
connectivity.
Oh, that's too bad.
Oh no, bummer.
No, it was still good. We had a good conversation.
We discussed how to bring Calvinism into the Lutheran Church.
Oh
Not
yeah, we
really.
should have known better than to put the two of you together. I love it. Okay. Looks like everyone's back. Welcome back. Hopefully that was a good conversation. Pastor Sarah, I'll just turn it right back over to you if you want to hear people's feedback from what stirred
Yeah,
there.
I'd love to hear just a couple, like the ingredients, something that made, when you said, oh, it made it a great event or party. Just if anyone's willing, just to share kind of your comments, like what are those ingredients that you kind of talked about?
I'd say even having just a, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go Molly, go.
Oh, okay. Even having a rough outline helps a lot to just kind of, if the plan deviates, that's fine, but at least you're starting from somewhere and more than one person is in on the plan and kind of has a place to go. Helps just things run a little more smoothly.
Yeah, ours one of us was like having a clear topic of discussion and kind of getting everybody in the same boat on that. And sometimes focusing it around food and a common event or, a holiday or something. Always made that good.
I'll let Greg expand on this a little bit, but they had individual questions underneath people's plates. Greg, you want to talk about that a little?
Well, it just was a little Thanksgiving thing that, intergenerational family gathering, everything from 5 years old to some of the folks my age and older. And we just had simple little questions under everybody's plate. Things such as, what was the best time you had with your dad this past year, or where would you travel? Those kinds of questions. And it was kind of fun to get all the family members just stopping and talking together that way over the table, and it morphed into deeper conversation.
That feels to me like whoever planned that might have read this book beforehand.
or be my wife.
Any events or programs that you've been to, you're like, okay, that was awful, but I'm interested in the reason why, like what kind of like you're like, oh, if want to share.
I shared that this past Thanksgiving, and this is not new to her, but I have one sister who always has a negative comment about things. And I hosted Thanksgiving, and I was not going to allow her comments to change my approach to everyone. I wanted everyone to feel welcome, so I deferred the conversation to another topic. I wasn't going to allow her to bring us all down. And it worked.
Mhm.
I shared, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, when there's no structure, you know, you are having individuals over and hosting, but there's no activity planned of some sort, and the individuals don't really know each other. And there hasn't been the effort taken to like introduce people and try to provide some type of commonality to get the conversation going.
I shared that authentic conversation, if you feel safe enough to share, you know what I mean? So if you're in a space where you don't feel that you can be who you are, who God created you to be, and able to share certain things about your life, that really kind of is a bummer.
So thank you, everybody. So I heard about kind of inviting people to share, like have a new experience, like at the dinner table, like intergenerational, about some structure, about feeling safe, about like kind of taking control of this. I'm not going to use great language, but like not letting your guests rule the party. Like intentional hosting is a little bit in there. Having a team, like having a team of like more than one person. These are all things that Priya talks about in her book in some shape or fashion, just a little bit more fully. So like all our comments kind of like touch on points of intentionality and I believe that we all intuitively know. But she organizes it in a conversation for us to really think about when we're gathering people. Now, there is a difference between hanging out and like having a gathering, right? We can hang out, like it's okay to hang out and just let things happen. That is different though when we're specifically inviting people to give up their time, whether it's a family party or a church event. But yes, hanging out is good too. Like not all of it has to be structured. So I think, Matt, we'll start moving on to the book a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, so when Pastor Sarah and I had talked about this, I mean, it was a really rich discussion. We were actually driving back from an event together. And so we were able to really dive in. And you had shared with me 3 kind of key things that rose to the top from the book. So will you just share that with us, and what sort of thinking that stirred in you?
So the main key emphasis, I think, in the book is really about honing in on purpose, and that a birthday party is not a purpose. Gathering friends and family to celebrate an important event, that's like a semi-purpose, and moving deeper. So really honing in. And so what we realize at church, and I think why this is so helpful for us, is that over time, our gatherings can leak purpose. And they become a program or a category of gathering versus something intentional and actually transformative. And I know I'll get pushback, but I think worship is one of the greatest offenders of this because it's this mixed thing. But when the program and the purpose align, it can be really powerful. But we often stop short. So I'm going to hand over to Bethany because this is something on staff so we have a phrase and we call it, we're going to Priya Parker it. And that usually means we need to hone in more on the purpose. So Bethany, you want to kind of talk about how we've been using that and doing that?
Sure. When we Priya Parker something, when we're talking about purpose, we just ask why. Why are we doing this? Why are we getting together? What's the point? And honestly, as a church as a whole, I think we've all been really great at doing things because they've always been done. And we don't want to offend anybody because this might have been, their baby 30 years ago. And I'm obviously COVID upended everything. And so then gives us actually the opportunity to rethink about why we do things. And that's why this book was so perfect, because it was right in the time when we were starting to all get back together again. And being apart for that long, we definitely wanted to be back together and just to be back together, but to have a defined purpose for it all made it seem worthwhile. And for those who still felt that it might have been a bit risky or something, it felt worth the risk for them. We have subsequently taken a lot of things off of our calendar. For example, we used to do a spaghetti dinner as a fundraiser. We used to do Easter breakfast as a fundraiser. The spaghetti dinner has since been replaced. The Easter breakfast has been taken away because why are we doing this? We would make a little bit of money, but it wasn't a hospitality hosting thing that needed to happen. It was a little crazy during Easter. We had to really think through that kind of thing. Conversely, we've had events that aren't as well attended anymore, where you would think, okay, well, half the people are coming, and so we just shouldn't do it anymore. For example, our confirmation retreat, we used to have it be mandatory, and we would get 40 some kids who came. After COVID, obviously it can't be mandatory anymore. And so we just explain what it is and why we're going. And we've had probably half those numbers. So one would think it's not worth the time. It's not worth finding the transportation to get there, which is the biggest thing, right? But what happens and what we know is that the bonds that are formed in this simple overnight are huge. And that alone is a great purpose for us to be together away from the church, getting to know each other, away from confirmation class. We go to Bethel Horizons, where they do the high ropes course, and to have these 7th and 8th graders be terrified to be up there and to have their peers cheering them on. And it's super powerful. And those 3 hours alone are worth it for those 20 kids. So it's an important event with a great purpose, a defined purpose, whether it's for 20 people or for 40 people.
So I think like something Bethany shared is like, if we have programs that the purpose really doesn't align with who the program's for. And that happens, that happens a lot, like just saying like the fundraising events or something like, and we talk about kids in worship. Is it for, what's the purpose, formation purpose, and does the event match those pieces? Also, the other thing that we've done is sometimes we'll have 3 purposes for an event. We try to narrow it down to 2, because we've learned if we have 3 purposes, we tend to flatten the event. And we're not really honing into what is the primary thing that we're hoping to accomplish or invite people into, and really trying to hold that on. And so we'll get into trouble sometimes because we try to like accomplish 4 things in an hour, and we're like, nope, that's not going to happen. Bethany, really quick. So the next thing that we've really taken out of the book is about, and I think is about space. Space has incredible emotional impact. A congregation of 60 and a massive sanctuary is emotionally deflating, especially if there's no boundaries around that. People constantly walk in and say there's nobody here. You put them in a chapel and you've got a party. So space is very emotional and sends lots of cues about who's welcome. And leveraging space is about 80% of the work in a gathering. So we've done a couple of things, but Bethany, can you talk about the youth rooms that you set up? Yeah. Which I think is hysterical.
Yes. So I am a huge proponent for lighting. I hate overhead lights. I feel like the space just seems more intimate and inviting if you have lamps. So in our youth lounge, for example, we have obviously couches, but we have just the simple thing of making sure there are tables for people to put their drinks on, or clipboards in there for them to be able to write on, or things like that. Our confirmation classes used to be shared with our Sunday school spaces. So the 7th, 8th, 9th graders would come in and sit down at tiny tables in tiny chairs and looking at what they think were baby things, and they would feel like they were using someone else's space. So we have taken a lot of time to make their own classrooms where they have a theme. And for example, even if it's a color, or if it's like, we have one room that's rainbows, we have one, but there's a lamp in each room that before classes start, I go turn on, or the fairy lights. Kids love those fairy lights, so they're everywhere too. But they had just helped to create a space that they feel like is their own. And so the first month I would go turn the lights on, and then I quit because it's their space and they know to turn the lights on when they get in there. For our Sunday school, we did a fantastic thing where we used to have our opening downstairs in our fellowship hall, while everybody else is upstairs where our sanctuary and our gathering spaces. You can honestly have 100 people downstairs, and if you're upstairs, you wouldn't know. So our Sunday school families were being separated from the rest of the church. The coffee hours upstairs. They didn't have coffee downstairs. They didn't. So we thought, well, why are we doing this? What is the purpose? And we decided to move everything upstairs into our chapel area. It's a much smaller area. It feels a lot bigger when you're in the space. It feels like it's crowded when you're in the space, which is great. You're close together, so you don't feel like, as a third grader, if you don't want to sing and dance, nobody's going to notice. You have to, because you're there in the space. Parents are coming to drop their kids off in the same space that our first service is exiting. So at first we were like, well, this may be a problem because of traffic flow. And I was like, this is a great problem. They're going to bump into each other. People might actually meet each other. They're going to see that there's worship going on up here, and there's a whole bunch of kids who are running around, and it's all in the same space. So quite honestly, that has been the greatest thing that we have done.
Thank you, Bethany. And so part of Priya just does different scenarios, looks at square footage for the size of group you're having, and also talks, if you watch a dinner party, people will end up in the kitchen in the end, right? Like how we naturally gravitate towards smaller spaces or bigger spaces. What we know at church is we leak out energy in big rooms. So we even can create false walls or settings just to try to really get a container in, because of getting that relational energy not leaking out because the room's too big. And it seems like a simple thing, but it's moving, because our moving things into smaller spaces has increased the intimacy and the intentionality and the energy of our events. So one of the other key points is really like in thinking about how we gather is, who is this event for? And here, this is like a really hard thing that she writes for congregations, because it's a value of ours. General hospitality is often the worst because it demands guests conform, and it sets us up for competing values. And so at our church, our value is everyone is welcome. But in reality, it's very difficult to design and have events that are really welcoming, intergenerational for everybody. So we've got this value of inclusivity, but really what it's covering up is, no, we're inclusive, but you got to be like us when you come in the room. Do you know what I mean? Like, so because our events are so big, they get flat. So really honing in, like, who is this for? There's also this habit of, we plan events for other people and we're assuming what they want or that they should be there, and it's not for us. So anyway, I think those are things you may have done in the past or know about. But Martha's been working with a ministry that's coming back online and really kind of working this question, like, who are these things for? What's the difference between an advertisement and an invite? So Martha, I'm gonna let you talk a little bit about how you've been working with people, how you've been working with us to help us on that.
Oh, sure. So one of the ministries we're talking about here is women's ministry. And, with COVID and all those things, we kind of left that on the table. And so we're starting that back up. And so figuring out, like, who is it for? Who are these different events for? Honestly, has been one of our biggest challenges, because when you look at the amount of women in our congregation, it's like a giant invite list, right? So coming back to our purpose of wanting these women to, first of all, meet each other and start connecting, having these big productions that we always put on, like, that does not lead to, it becomes entertainment versus engagement, right? So we looked at, how can we do this? Because there's things that people are comfortable with in terms of gathering and others are not, right? So we looked at different types of events. That's where we're starting. And so some are, like a how-to kind of thing, where it's an hour of time that we're asking them to come. It's not a big thing. And it can be multi-generational. So it could be moms and daughters, or, moms and their moms, or whatever. And so that's been really kind of fun, because we've learned how to crochet, which was hilarious for me because I'm terrible at it, but we learned how to decorate cupcakes, and we're trying different things like that, where it's on the Wednesday night where everybody else is at church. So it's kind of a fun time to come. And we've also done other things like brunching at Short Haven, which is our big assisted independent living place in town. And that seems to be more single generational, but it's eating, you know, it brings these things into where some people going and having to have a conversation with people when that they are not comfortable doing that, it gives us something to do while we're doing it. So we're trying those couple of things. We've also, another one that really has helped us is getting out of the building. You know, we went to a park, we tried to do some things there, found that women really did want to talk to each other. So that, I mean, those have been all learnings. And so we keep working on it. We keep coming back to it. We look at, you know, she uses the concept of working backwards. And so we'll look at, like, what do we want to have happen at these meetings, and who do we want to be affected by that? And so we look at that and think, you know, looking at the outcome, how do you back into that planning then to have that look like that? So it's been, you know, really just trying a few things now at different levels, but at the end of the day, it's women. So no offense to our men, we want to be inclusive to them, but we have, you know, right now they're not invited. so it's been awesome learning. It's been really fun to put together.
So Martha, you touched, so that's been a topic of conversation. Like we're kind of like past gender binary gender categories at church. So we're like, really, it has to be women's. I mean, like we talk, like, it's good though, because we're talking about it. But Priya has this kind of this idea, and Martha, you alluded to it, and Bethany, I'm going to invite you to talk about Wednesday nights. But the phrase that Martha has is gracious in, what is it? It's exclusion, like who's not invited.
Yeah.
And so Bethany wants to, and it's about protecting the guests that are invited. So we are uninvited. I don't know. Why don't you talk about Wednesday worship?
Well, it's the worst word that you can use in a church setting is exclusion. I mean, we're trying to reach everyone. We want everyone to be involved. The love of Christ is for everyone. So it took us a little while to wrap our heads around it. And honestly, I didn't like that chapter until I'm going to share a personal story. My husband is a hockey coach, and he wanted me to go to one of his traveling tournaments. And I want to go to support him. And I actually could go because it wasn't over a Sunday. And so I went and felt completely like a middle schooler who was not involved with the cool kids. And I started to feel hurt and sad, and thank God for this book, because I was like, this gathering is not for me. It's not. I'm the coach's wife. I'm not a parent. I don't have a child on the team. So I like just smacked in the face with gracious exclusion, and talking about how this isn't for me, and that's okay. So we have on Wednesday night, and I don't think I'm overstating when I say it might be our staff's favorite worship service. We gather with high schoolers and middle schoolers, and we worship in our chapel for a half an hour before we do all of our classes and things. And we love it. And we started in the sanctuary. It was too big. Kids were separated. They weren't sitting together. They had their own little groups. So we were like, we're moving this to the chapel. It's a smaller place. It felt much better for everybody to be, you're forced to be closer together. And then we had a conversation about maybe moving it back because there's not enough room to invite everybody to join. And so we talked about how it would really take away what the purpose of that worship is if we opened it up to everyone. We tell the confirmation and high school parents that they are more than welcome to come. We have about 5 who come. There are other adults there, less small group leaders, whatever, but our choir meets immediately when it's done at 7 o'clock. And we thought, well, maybe we should open this up to everybody and say, maybe this is our 4th worship service, and really struggled to have that discussion to say, that's not what we want. That would harm it. It would change it too much for the kids and harm the intent and purpose. So we have made the choice to graciously exclude for our Wednesday night worship services.
And we're so committed to that. We're actually, and we're going to a lot more smaller worship gatherings because we're able to hold the purpose intent. But so we usually give this worship service up to the whole congregation for Lent, and we're not going to this year, but that meant we have to add other services because we don't want to flatten the, you know what I mean? So we've got a group that's powerful. We're just going to take it away from them and make it for everybody. And then they don't feel welcome. And that was their feedback last year at worship. They hated it. Like
I
they were
did.
just like, and we were like, oh, we have so many people, we're so happy, it's intergender, you know, and they're like, we hate it. So we're making larger congregational decisions on generous exclusion space, but so we're at like trying to figure out how to do that. Now, again, we've got competing values, things that, you know, intergenerational, everybody's well. So we are struggling. I mean, these are tensions that we hold, but we're saying what's the primary purpose, who and what, and we're leaning into that. So but we hold those tensions. So one thing that like we'd like to get to is just talking like overall about the challenge of really honing in to the purpose, but one and kind of workshopping that together. But one thing other point that she lifts up is, and I shared this with Matt, is a lot of our hosting at church stops with the logistics. We think because we have the event planned and we got all the volunteers, we got the workers, we got the food or whatever, that's the end of it. And so, and it is okay. Like we can have a congregational meal and that's fine, but we're sort of hoping by osmosis, people will build community at the table on their own. Like, or like we're like, oh, we got all of this. And then we quit hosting once the event gets going. So that was one of our kind of habits for larger events. So it's really thinking through, even before the invitation goes out, what's the whole trajectory of the event. And so anyway, I just wanted to share that's one thing that we're working on too, especially for congregation-wide things. We think community building is going to happen magically, and it doesn't. And so we're going to be doing, so one of the things that we're learning because of this book, we're doing, we're going to attempt to do dinner church during Lent, and we're having table hosts to help us because we want intentional conversations. So we're not letting that happen just by happenstance. We're trying to host it in such a way that it has the greatest chance of actually happening, that because that's the number one purpose of the night. So that's just one little example. Martha, if you're willing to kind of talk about, and I can share the first conversation. So when the women's ministry came back online, they're like, we have to have a tea, and then we have to give everybody a job so they'll actually come. So anytime you're actually talking people into coming to an event, that should be like a little warning flag that maybe your purpose hasn't been defined, or to trick people into showing up. So Martha, you've been working with that group, and I know it's been a challenge, like to shift, but is there anything you want to lift up about that process of really kind of moving from a program to a purpose?
Sure. We keep coming back to the why. We met a lot of meetings, and Molly's nodding her head because she was there, about the why and getting away from the what we've done itis thing. And so we had to think about like what could be completely different about this. What is the point of this? What do we really want to do? And so, and we keep talking about it. We were still talking about it now, because as we've tried some things, we'll learn like what worked well about that. How can we take that to the next level? And, evolving the format. There's so many things that are helpful, like changing the space, evolving the format of it. Sometimes we bring snacks to make that different. But, as we kept drilling down into this, we realized that it's okay to keep working on it. It's okay to be a work in progress. We're not ever going to learn everything. We definitely start with the things we want to do. That has helped also, instead of trying to guess. But it's not always the same women that come to everything. And so that's another big learning. And because we want them to keep coming back. I mean, that's the point, right? Not just to come once and never come again. So that's, I would say, it's okay to keep working on it, to just be a work in progress, keep learning. We keep coming back to this book quite a bit because it's like, okay, maybe something about that didn't work. I mean, we're planning an event for tomorrow night and we are still working on it as we're getting ready to do it. So I think that's actually been very helpful. It doesn't have to all be buttoned up, because we always did these huge things and it was stressful and everybody was all, yeah. And then we've realized we don't need, that's, people don't want that anyway. So what do they want? Let's keep trying.
So the way that we shared it, like the congregation is I handed out to people. We read it as a staff, and I have, if anyone's interested, I can email it. We did a weekly chapter, and we just applied it to our situation. Like, we just went chapter by chapter, so that we had, and the goal, and I wrote down like our goals were just to learn factors that go into successful, purposeful, transformational gatherings. So just to get educated, that we as a staff would develop a shared language and framework, and then lean into the intentionality and purpose. And that is going to help us manage multiple values. That's really what we're using this is to manage competing values or multiple values. And then to equip leaders in the framework. So Martha, Molly, like they're here as ministry leaders. So we've also kind of handed it to ministry groups and said, hey, read this. But really now I think our council will read it as or at least a group, because we're using it when we're making major changes. Like we're moving ministries to different rooms. We're saying, we're making big decisions, like especially large gatherings, small gatherings, so that they have some sense of really how we're trying to work on this purpose piece, and that we're sharing kind of a shared language about that. And so even at council meeting a couple months ago, I'm just like to council, are we getting out of council what the purpose of council? Like, you know what I mean? Are we structuring even our meetings? And like, we didn't have any answers, but at least tossing that question out, like, are we achieving that? And so we're just trying to ask those questions across the board. I think if it's okay, Matt, I'll stop here and just kind of toss it out and see if there's questions or, and we'll go from there.
Yeah,
Does you have
absolutely.
any? Yeah.
Absolutely. There's one piece I really want to affirm and just celebrate the fact that you have given us permission to in the intentionality say we're never going to have this tied up with a bow. It's not that we're going to say this value over here. Nope, we're saying no to that completely, and we're saying yes to this value over here completely. We are managing competing values, and by continually asking what's the purpose of this, who's it for, those three things you invited us to, that's part of the kind of managing. It's in the wrestling, right? We have good stuff in the scriptures about being blessed in the wrestling. So I just love that you've invited us to that. I have a quick question because I think this will be instructive for everybody, and then we'll open it up for if there's a few things pinging for others before we're going to do a closing activity together. The question is, I am curious if whether it's Martha or Bethany could give us a little bit of a window into how you used the purpose conversation to address the Easter breakfast. Like, because I think a lot of our congregations are dealing with something like an Easter breakfast where what'd you call it? What we've done itis, where it's like, we've done that, so why should we do it? Because we've done that. So I'm curious just how you manage that conversation and the inevitable pushback and help the key leaders come to a place of saying it's about purpose. Can you just share a little bit more about what that looked like? Actually pruning away something based on the purpose conversation.
Sure. I think COVID gave us a great opportunity, especially with something like a meal, where we were like, okay, so are we really going to all come back together and eat? People are nervous about it. And so, I think it gives us the opportunity to look at everything in general, but especially with this, we just decided, it's not going to be exactly what we needed what it was before, because there were so many people who came. And now it's different. And I think the way that we addressed it, Pastor Sarah, maybe you can help me remember, but part of it was all of the volunteers who were there were spending their entire Easter literally from 6 a.m. until noon, cleaning up, preparing, serving. And that wasn't what we wanted the purpose of our Easter to be. And so that was a decision too. I mean, we probably 10 adults who were unable to worship on Easter. And so in order for us to be up, we were upstairs then, and then we were hosting and hospitality up there, and just generally worshiping was just it was almost a no-brainer for us. But Pastor Sarah dealt with the pushback more than I did.
Well, I think the other part is that ministry is focused on the baptismal promises. So we couldn't draw a direct line, convincing, compelling, intentional, purposeful line between hosting this Easter breakfast and the baptismal promises. Now you could say serving or whatever, but that's not no, like it's got to be like that. Okay, we say that for everything, but it had to be more. And I think we just said is this event really support the faith formation of this group, or is it a convenience meal? And Bethany answered, it's a convenience meal except for the people, like, and we're like, then we're not doing it. It's not and that meal does not share the love of Christ to transform lives. It's a meal. Like meals are important, but not, anyway. So I think, but I was more like, we're just like, no. But we've done that with a lot of the fundraiser meal, like because it doesn't build up the faith formation of the kids and with enough outcome. So anyway, that's
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you, because I think a lot of ministry leaders are wondering how to prune something based on this intentionality around purpose. So thanks for sharing a little bit more about that. Briefly, Pastor Sarah, I just want to name a couple things that you had named to me in our conversation for today, just some brilliant things, and maybe we just put those out there because these are direct quotes from you. One of them was, there's a difference giving someone a job and engaging them. And the other one was that you all are trying to move from ideas to experiences. We are going to close with a brief exercise where everybody can practice the purpose thing. But is there anything you want to name about those? Those were two things that rose to the top in our conversation. Anything about that difference between giving someone a job and engaging them, or moving from ideas to experiences?
So I think the job to engagement kind of went back to like a little bit like the Easter breakfast, like it's a task. It's not tied to a ministry experience or tied to our mission or vision statement. And it's also really elevating, serving, and volunteering. And so I think we're working hard. When are you slotted in a job, and when are you really invited to be part of something? And that's and we we're not trying to make it overcomplicated, overthink it, or have it all, put in a bow, but really be more intentional about that. Or when it is a job, that's okay, but we don't pretend it's something bigger. It's a job. I mean, that someone's got to do.
Pastor Sarah, can I interrupt for just a quick second? You talked to me last week about my small group leaders and giving them more training and more time. And then before I could even say anything, you said, I know that you don't want to ask them for more, but if you ask them for more, it elevates what they're doing. And I think that's super, super important, because that is engaging them more than giving them just a job. I think,
it's inviting people into ministry versus, and I know that's like pretty known thing, but we're working on that with this book, and that's helping us say no to events too. Like, what events just create jobs? What events help facilitate ministry?
I love it. I love it. Well, there's so much more we could talk about, but we don't want to end this session without having you tell us a little bit about page 25 and how we can actually practice together briefly before we end refining a purpose.
Yeah. So what I was going to invite everyone to do is think of an event that's on your calendar coming up. And so Priya, and I also have a document that was set by a worship convention, a conference that we can send out. That's just like a real shorthand version of like ways to think through quick events that I think you can get pretty far with. But she's got a process on page 25 in her book that says, do you have a purpose for this event? So the first question is, what's the gathering type? And then the next is, your purpose is a category if you don't have a purpose, or it's a basic boring purpose, at least you're trying. And then your purpose is specific, unique, and disputable. And so really kind of saying, like, so for example, the church one she has is a small group. Like, a lot of us would say that's a purpose. It's not. That's a program. That's a type of gathering. Well, why are we doing it? Oh, we want people to get together. Okay, that's not enough. Like, how to really hone in, because that'll help you. So a small group is one thing. Saying the purpose of this is for people to have intimate, consistent conversations. That's going to help you structure the event. So I'm just inviting you to think of something that's on your calendar in the next couple of weeks or months that you could practice thinking through those questions. So what is the purpose, and kind of honing down on that. Like you're talking about all the questions she lifts up. So this is amazing that you're bringing this up. So one is, I heard you say, like, for yourself, one potential purpose, like, and it's probably the in-between thing, is education. But then the next question that could help on purpose is, who is this for? Who is it not for? Because that helps focus the purpose. And that doesn't mean you're inviting or not inviting. It just helps you kind of think through, oh, who, okay, educate who, why, what, how to grow together. And then testing that. So those are the questions, just like exactly what you said, is the questions that Priya lifts up, is like, who is this for? Who's it not for? Who should we invite? But what's the outcome? And I think, like, I love your example because it's not a lot different than the Easter breakfast. We inherit something and we try to back engineer purpose into things. When we get lucky, we get to start something new and we can start with the purpose, right? And then we can build the event. But we back engineer purpose into a lot of things. So then that takes either, okay, we're going to just do it, or the courage to say no. You know what I mean? Like, or investigate. But it's a great example because it's not a lot different than Easter breakfast. When we inherit something and we're like, we don't know what was the purpose. So we have to ask people, and then make a decision for a new day, maybe. I don't know, like what, but you highlighted exactly her questions. Who is it for? Who's it not for? Why would I want it?
And your statement, Pastor Sarah, about back engineering purpose into things, boy, does that feel. I saw a bunch of people nodding around the virtual room here when you said that. So because we promised people that these are going to be 60 minutes, I want to be smart about that. And this will be recorded. And there are going to be the resources that Pastor Sarah has mentioned. I've been making notes of the different things where you said, oh, we can send you that. We will post all of those things. I'll follow up with Pastor Sarah and get those various items, and we will post them with this video. The one I want to ask you about before we go, Pastor Sarah, is what was it called? The Art of Gathering Assessment and Planning Tool. Is that the thing from page 25, or can you just tell us about that?
So the planning tool is the link I sent to you. It's from a worship conference that just summarizes the book. If you're interested, I've written for our now it's written for our Savior, like, you can put your church's name in, swap it out. I've written a study guide that we used in staff to help, and part of it was from the book. It was to help us focus on the purpose and, like, just kind of work through conversations. And then, like, real quickly, there's some chapters called, like, don't start a funeral with logistics. Well, that hurt hard in church because I think of how often we start worship with logistics, or don't end with announcements. Don't let your guests spend. I mean, there's just a lot of things that we just tightened up by reading it. And that
we tightened up our endings a lot.
Yeah.
And Pastor Sarah does that really well when we're all together. Like, we will usually, if we have an event with parents, we will end with a blessing. And instead of just saying, well, thanks for coming, have a good night, you end with a blessing, and it just makes it feel complete.
So those are other things that are in the book. But if anyone's interested in the study guide, like, I think email me. I made it up, so I don't want to put that online, but you could certainly I'll get it to Pastor Matt. So that if you want to reach it out, or to me, like, you can certainly have it.
Very good. Then probably what we'll do is, instead of a link to the actual document, Pastor Sarah, we will just include, like, a link where folks could email you.
Perfect.
Yeah, that'd be great. And then if that's shared one-to-one, that works great. What you just said, Bethany, feels to me like a timely word, as it is 7:30 and it's time to wrap this up. And I'm not going to just say, hey, thanks for coming. I am curious, Bethany or Martha or Pastor Sarah, if one of you would be willing to bless us on our way tonight.
I will do a version, if it's okay, Bethany, of what we've been doing. And I usually cry every time I do it.
She does.
Yeah. So if you're open to receiving it, may you know we see God in you. May you know that you are not alone, that you belong to God. May you know that you are loved and that we do life together. Amen.